Okay, we're not talking silicone. We don't talk about that. Silica. All right, silica is actually the main ingredient in almost all sand. Silica is actually the main ingredient on planet Earth. We have more silica here than anything else. And of course, it's the main ingredient sand, but it's also the main ingredient glass. So it's very easy for people to say that glass is made of sand. But sometimes people don't realize, though, that as if you just take sand by itself and you put it in that furnace and get it really hot, it doesn't turn into glass. Actually, if you take sand by itself and you put it in that furnace and get it really hot, it turns into this very odd stuff called really hot sand, okay? Because you see, sand by itself actually doesn't have enough ingredients in it to create glass. Sand has one ingredient, and that's our primary ingredient. We call it silica. Now, there's another name that we use for silica. Many times we call it quartz. So basically, glass is simply made out of quartz. But melting quartz is really hard to do. It takes very high temperatures. Temperatures of well over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, that's fine. I could probably get this furnace up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit one time because it would melt. See, the bricks it's made out of, the bricks inside that furnace, they're actually one of the main ingredients in there is silica. So how can I take silica and put it inside the silica without, it's not going to work, okay? I would literally wind up melting the furnace before I could melt the sand, okay? So let's say I had a special furnace that I could get much hotter than that. Let's say I could get a furnace hot enough to just take sand and put it in there and melt it down. It still wouldn't turn into glass. It would turn into what's called fused quartz. And that's much different than glass. It has different physical properties. See, in order to get that silica from the sand to turn into glass, you have to have what's called a flux. And what a flux does is at high temperatures, it kind of attacks the silica and it surrounds it. And it scrubs it really good, and it allows it to bond together at much lower temperatures than it normally would. And then depending upon the flux that you add to it, it will actually cause that silica to do something interesting that we call decrystallize. And then when you take that crystalline form, that silica or that quartz, and then you cause it to decrystallize, it now turns into what we call glass. And glass and silica are very different from each other, okay? You see, silica and quartz is a crystalline form. Glass is one of the few materials on the planet that no matter how cold it gets, it never ever crystallizes. It has no crystalline structure, okay? So it's very interesting material, glass. Now, fluxes. Fluxes are not normally found in sand. And of course, that's why you can't take sand by itself and turn it into glass, because sand simply doesn't have enough ingredients in it to create glass, okay? Okay?
Okay.
Are you guys with me today? Are you all here? Okay?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I could stand up here and get you to cheer and force you to cheer and hope that you cheer, but just kind of pretend like you're here, all right? Okay, so sand doesn't have enough ingredients in it to create glass. And of course, this is the point where I usually get a question about lightning striking the beach. Does anybody need to ask that question? Yeah? What happens when lightning strikes the beach? It doesn't create beautiful crystal sculptures, okay? It just doesn't. It does in the movies, but that was just a movie, you guys. See, when lightning strikes the beach, it actually creates these things called fulgurites. And fulgurites don't even look like glass. Actually, they look like someone took green glue and just dumped it into the sand. Now, sometimes fulgurites can get very complex because lightning is, well, it's pretty interesting stuff. Actually, it can get up to as high as 70,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's considered to be the hottest thing on the entire planet. And of course, when it hits the ground, it can create some pretty strange... I mean, we have fulgurites that are as deep as 12 feet into the ground. We have some fulgurites that are really wide, but most of them, they just look like a stone about the size of the palm of your hand, okay? All right, so what I'll do is I'll take silica from the sand, and then I'll add a flux. The flux I use is a combination of soda ash, lime, and barium. I mix that with my silica and it makes a white powder. And then I get this furnace pretty hot. Down inside that furnace there's a kettle in there called the crucible. I take the white powder and a shovel and I just fill the crucible up. Then I close the door and I go away and I come back usually around 8 hours later. And that white powder, it just sits in there and cooks and bubbles all night long. And then when you open the door in the morning, all that you're left with is what's in there right now. It's just a beautiful, pristine pool of glass. Right now inside that crucible, there's almost 100 pounds of molten glass just sitting in there. When you open up that door and you look inside, it actually just looks like a giant pot full of honey. I mean, you just want to grab that thing and shove your tongue in there, but it's a bad idea, Pooh. It's not going to taste good, okay? Yeah, it's over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit inside that thing. All right, now, that furnace behind me, the one on your left here, this thing runs all the time. When I come into a new village, I turn it on. I won't turn it off again until I'm ready to go. So it's on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So whenever I want to work, all I have to do is take one of my tools, use it like it was a honey dipper, get a little bit of glass on the end of it, and then just take it out and begin to shape it into whatever shape that I want. But as soon as it comes out of that furnace door, it begins to cool. And actually it cools pretty quickly. You've only got so much time to work with it before it becomes, well, so hard and stiff that you can't shape it anymore. And so that's what our other piece of equipment over here is for. This one's only on when I'm working, and it's used for reheating the glass to increase your working time. See, once that glass becomes hard and stiff, you go in here, get it nice and hot, and you can soften it up so you can work the glass longer. This one is not called a furnace. Actually, this is called the glory hole. And I didn't make that name up, all right? Every glass blower across the world for centuries has called this piece of equipment the glory hole, okay? And as a matter of fact, I'd like to introduce you to the very first thing that was ever called the glory hole. Anything called that after this was named after this piece of equipment, okay? See, basically what it is, you just wait till the glass gets really hard and stiff, and then you put it in the glory hole, and it makes it softer, okay? All right, now, the glory hole, only on when I'm working, used for reheating the tools, or preheating the tools, but also reheating the glass, okay? Now, the tools are getting very hot on the end. That's so the glass will stick to them, because glass actually won't stick to the metal unless it is hot. So I'm going to start with this guy right here, and if you notice, it has a hole in the end of it. It's actually a hollow tube. We call it the blowpipe, okay, which is kind of a misnomer because you don't actually blow through this pipe. Now I'm going to take this thing, use it like it was a honey dipper, get a little bit of hot crystal on the end of the pipe, come right here to my table. Now atop this table, I've got all these piles of broken colored glass. I'll take the hot crystal, I'll roll it in the colors, and a few of the pieces will stick. And then I'll head back into the glory hole and reheat it and melt it on there. Then I'll come back and I'll add more color. And then I'll head back to the glory hole, and then I'll come back to the table and add more color. And then I'll back to the glory hole and back to the table, back to the glory hole. And then probably after that many trips to the glory hole, I'm probably just going to be exhausted, you guys. But anyway, the whole time I'm doing that, I'm kind of hoping you guys will make this a little bit more fun, okay? All you have to do is do your job. It makes it so much more fun for everybody, okay?
Yeah.
All right, now, do you guys know your job? Oh, yeah, okay. See, I don't know if most of you may know this, but this is a question and answer demonstration, okay? Okay, so while I'm working, all I need you to do is ask questions. Yeah, you ask questions, and of course, I'll continue to work. Now, if you stop asking questions, I'm probably just going to assume you're no longer interested in what it is that I'm doing, and I'll probably just quit working. So would you like to see this piece come to fruition? Yes? Okay, all right. So all you have to do is, there you go. So go ahead and get started.
How long does it take that first oven to cool down when you shut it off?
This one?
Yeah.
This one I take longer to cool it because that crucible that's inside of there that holds the glass, it's actually prone to what we call thermal shocking. So I like to take at least 48 hours to heat it up or to cool it down. If you cool it too quick, you can get microfractures in it. And then the next time you heat it up, the microfractures become a little bit more macrofractures, and so on and so forth, until the glass literally starts dripping out the side of the thing. So yeah, the one on the right over there, the glory hole, I can just turn it off and it's cooled down within 20 minutes or so. And then I heat it up, it only takes about maybe 10 minutes for it to get hot. So it goes from ambient temperature up to over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit in like 10 or 15 minutes. But it's the materials it's made out of, they're not prone to that thermal shock. All right, now let's use this pipe like it was a honey dipper. Just go into the furnace, get a little bit of the crystal on the end of it. And, ooh, I should have put more glass in last night. We're getting a little bit low. Now the colored glass. This is called frit, F-R-I-T-T. And it's actually just piles of broken colored glass. Now, you see a little bit of it sticks on there. Now we'll kind of push all of that up off the end of the pipe. And then we'll put a color on the bottom. The first color I'm using is a beautiful metallic blue. And then the color on the bottom is, well, basically it's purple or plum.